Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, Just Another Struggling Writer, the beleaguered author's one-stop shop for commiseration and hopefully inspiration. My name is Carrie Scher and I am just another struggling writer. Well everyone, we did it. We made it to 2024. Happy New Year. I don't know about you guys, but 2023 personally pretty much sucked. We've had a lot of things going on in my personal life with the fire and the move, and then me and my partner both getting new jobs. It's been a lot, and I am absolutely 100% eager to leave it behind and look forward to a new year. I'm a person that actually loves January 1st and all of the energy that the new year brings. I have a tattoo of a phoenix on my back because I just love the idea of new beginnings so much. I love the idea of having a fresh start, new chances, new goals, new everything. And so this time of the year is actually really energizing for me. Now, whether or not I'm able to maintain that energy is another story entirely, but we won't go there just yet. So with that in mind, I've got a bunch of new goals that I want to talk about today. Some that are reading related, some that are writing related, some that are channel related and content creation related. And then I'll talk about my very first TBR of the year, my January TBR. So first, why don't we talk about my reading resolutions? These are the resolutions, the goals I'd like to meet for my reading life in 2024. So last year, I set a reading goal of 50 books for the whole year. That is a book a week. And at the time, I thought that that was a pretty achievable goal, a pretty manageable goal. I had just started getting back into reading and I wasn't looking to immediately run up and meet those bigger channels, those bigger readers that can do 100 or more books a year. I knew I was never going to make that. So I set my sights lower, something really achievable at 50 books a year, about one book a week. I didn't even make it that far because I hit a big reading slump right there after the fire where I wasn't really interested in reading anything. All of my mental energy was just sort of spent recouping from the trauma of the fire and the move. I ended up hitting about 36 books. I added a couple of books since my end of the year wrap up because I managed to read a few more after I filmed it. So I ended up with about 36 books. That averages out to about 3 books a month. And that's not too bad. Again, considering all of the craziness that was going on in my life and the fact that I was just getting back into reading for the first time in many years. But I'm not going to be satisfied with 36 books this year. I'm not even going to be satisfied with 50 books this year. I am setting my sights higher. And the reason for that is because if I set a bigger goal for myself, something that is achievable but bigger than what I'm used to, I will strive for that goal more. Now, even if I don't meet it, I will more than likely exceed what I would have done otherwise. So for this year, I am setting a goal of 75 books. That's 25 books more than last year's goal that I didn't even meet. So you might think that this sounds crazy. And on average, that would double my reading output from last year. Now, why don't I just step myself up gradually? Well, because last month I actually read almost 6 books in the month of December, despite it being the busiest month of the year at my job, despite it having my son's birthday and Christmas to contend with and family visiting and all of that. I still managed to get a lot of reading done. And that convinced me that I can do it. I just need to prioritize it more, which I did in December. So I know that I can read 6 books in a month. I know that. I can read a book throughout the week and then add 1 or 2 on the weekends, which is actually my goal. My goal for 2024 is to read 1 book Monday through Friday every single week until the end of the year. And then on the weekends when my kids are visiting their dad and they're not in my house, adding a weekend read to my reading total. So that means on Friday night when they are picked up until Sunday night when they are dropped off, that'll be my time to sit down and read a book from cover to cover. I want to do that's every other weekend. So on average, 2 weekends a month for a total of 6. But that's not my only reading goal. I actually have a lot of ideas of how I want to construct my monthly TBRs. The first one being I want to continue with the series every single month. I am the kind of reader that I actually enjoy the break that we get in between series entries. I am not a binge reader when it comes to series. I actually like to take time to digest the story that I just read before getting back into that world and continuing on. And if I do, I end up kind of feeling tired of it and feeling bored of the setting, and I just need a breather. So that means that my TBR, like my total TBR, is a hodgepodge of the first entry or the second entry of many, many, many series, because I have already started many, many, many series. So I'm going to try and get that a little bit more under control this year by continuing on with a series I've already started at least once a month. I'm also going to try harder to read more recent and current releases. As I've mentioned before, I am behind the bandwagon on a lot of series, on a lot of books, and a lot of authors. And that means that I'm always kind of running to catch up. And I think instead of trying to play catch up, I think I should just start reading books that are currently being released. And that way I can kind of stay on top of current trends and current things that people are talking about. So because I want to be part of that community too. So that's the other thing that I'm going to be trying to do every year, is reading a book that has been released within the last 3 months. Another idea I'm going to try my monthly TBRs is reading a book outside of my preferred genre of fantasy. I love fantasy, and as I mentioned in the very first video I made for this channel, I want to be reading fantasy in search of comp titles for my own writing. Now, to be fair, I haven't even finished a manuscript or polished it up or even gotten ready to send to an agent, but that means it's just all the more important to stay on top of books that have been recently released and may or may not be relevant to the stories that I'm writing. That being said, I can't just limit myself to fantasy anymore. I love fantasy. It's my favorite genre, and that will be the primary genre I focus on reading. But I would also like to branch out a little bit and read more outside of that fantasy comfort zone. I do prefer to keep things speculative. I'm not really a big literary person. I'm not a big romance person unless it's fantasy adjacent. So I'd like to keep things speculative and in that kind of wheelhouse. That means paranormal, that means horror, that means sci-fi, kind of in that area. So once a month, instead of a fantasy book that I would normally pick up, I'm going to pick up something that is specifically non-fantasy. And the last trend I'd like to start in 2024 is making sure that one book from my TBR every month is coming from my local library. Now, in December, I actually started using my library a lot more because I had a lot of physical books that I was reading and I needed at least one audiobook to listen to. And so I ended up borrowing some from my library, and then that in turn led me to finding some ebooks that I didn't have on my TBR, or that I didn't have in my physical library at all. So that actually kind of made me think about going to my library physically and picking out one book out of their fantasy section, which isn't very robust, but it does have a lot of books that I normally wouldn't have read otherwise. And that'll also just get me in the library more often. When I picked up the book for this month, I took my daughter and she picked out some really great books too. And so it's just a really great way to just be more part of my local community and contribute to my library and just support that area of reading as well. And the last thing I would like to try this year that is reading related but not reading itself is maintaining a reading journal. Now, I have a book tracker spreadsheet that I keep that helps me kind of keep track of when I start books and kind of my general thoughts on it and some metadata about it, but I haven't really been reviewing books as much as I had in the past on my blog. I would like to continue to kind of write down my thoughts and have a place to look back at my initial feelings by keeping a reading journal. I posted a video a couple weeks ago about picking up one of those pre-printed ones from the local bookstore, and I liked that idea, but there just wasn't enough in it for me. So I thought that I would use just a regular notebook to kind of keep track of the books that I'm reading. I had a bunch of these just sitting around in a drawer because I love collecting notebooks. In times past, I would actually draft my manuscripts in them because I love longhand so much. But this is one that I just never got around to using. It's still got the information on it, but it is so beautiful. It's a really kind of soft faux leather cover, and the pages are just really beautiful. And I think this is going to be the notebook that I maintain my reading journal in. And this will just be a place where I can write down my initial thoughts and kind of give myself a review of how I'm feeling and what I liked about it. And this is something that I can refer back to if I ever want to do a video review of a book. I'm also going to be trying the caw pile system for the first time. If you have heard of it, it's just a different way of reviewing books. It's a little bit more comprehensive by giving different aspects of a story a separate rating and then averaging them together. I've been sort of an intuitive rater, just kind of based on my feelings and just my initial impressions. And I think this will help me just be a little bit more discerning when I'm giving out those ratings. And those are all my book-related resolutions for 2024. Let's get into my writing resolutions. So in the month of December, I tried writing 1,000 words per day just to see if that was something I could maintain. And it turns out that it was a little bit too much to ask for. I started off really strong, as I often do, but as things kind of piled up on me, writing became something that fell down the priority list, which for me, I want to be a writer. I don't want to be someone that just talks about writing. So that was really discouraging. And after giving it some thought, I think my problem is that my word count is too ambitious. With everything going on, especially with my job and with my kids and everything, at the end of the day, coming back and adding more work on top of that, it was really, really just mentally stressful. And I ended up avoiding it, which led to a lower word count total for the month of December than I would like. And I think the answer is not to give up writing every single day, but just kind of lower those expectations a little bit. What I would like to do, at least to start off with, is start writing every single day, but only doing about 500 words a day. That for me is about half an hour, maybe 45 minutes of work. And it's very, very achievable. It's something that I can knock out between putting the kids to bed and getting in the shower. Is still forward momentum, and that can produce a manuscript in less than a year. And ultimately, I'd like to build up to 1,000 words or more a day, but it's like a muscle that hasn't been exercised in a while. I don't need to go straight to running a 6-minute mile or whatever. I need to build myself up, build up my stamina, build up my momentum, and then continue to increase that word count total throughout the year until I'm to a comfortable place where I know that I can do it every day and that I am in the habit of doing it every day. So to start with 500 words a day, and when I'm really comfortable with that, when I see that I've done it every single day, then maybe bump it up to 600 or 700 or 750 or whatever, and go from there until at the end of the year, I would like to be back on my 1250 a day word total that I was doing when I was writing semi-professionally. So with that in mind, I would like to have my current work in progress, Seekers of Empyrean, the first draft finished by March 31st. That's 3 months. And the math doesn't quite work out to 500 a day, meeting my 75,000 word total, because I'm only at about 17,000 words right now. But it does average out to just over 600. And so there are going to be days where I'm more motivated to write more than just the 500. And so I'm counting on those motivating days to kind of carry me to the finish line, to finish by March 31st. Why March 31st? That's such an arbitrary deadline. Well, the reason I want to be done with Seekers of Empyrean by March 31st is because I would like to get back into my second work in progress, the Trials of the Windsong Goddess, for Camp NaNoWriMo in April. If you're not familiar with Camp NaNoWriMo, it is very similar to the big classic NaNoWriMo challenge of November, except you get to set your own goal. It's just a way to kind of motivate you throughout the year. There's another one in July, but it's not like the big ass-kicking challenge of November. I like to set a 30,000 word goal. That's 1,000 words a day. I don't know if I'll do that this time because, like I said, I'm going to be ramping up, but maybe like 20,000 words in the month of April to add to my second work in progress, the Trials of the Windsong Goddess. I'm also planning on using the July Camp Nano to continue with this manuscript, and I would like this second manuscript, Trials of the Windsong Goddess, to be finished by October 31st so that on November 1st, which is the classic Nano, I can start with a different project. Now that sounds like a lot, and it probably is, but I have full confidence that it is doable. And with this lower word count total, with these a little bit less ambitious ideas in my head of writing every day and writing so much every day, I think I actually can do it, especially with this channel keeping me on track and keeping me motivated. I am someone who thrives off public accountability, which is why I wanted to start doing the writing vlogs last month. And for me, they were a big success, at least to start with. Going forward, I think they still can be a success in terms of motivating me because, like I said, if I can tell you about my successes and I can feel embarrassed about the days that I didn't write, that actually really, really helps me get to that goal every single day. Something else I would like to start doing in terms of my writing is just being better about tracking my daily word count, because I think seeing the totals week over week and month over month will be really, really motivating for me. So I've got some ideas on how I can keep track of that. Mostly it's in my personal space, so it's something visual that I can see, yes, I hit my goal this month or this week or today or whatever, and see it and kind of be able to visualize what areas I need to improve on and where I was really successful. So that's it for my writing related goals, but what about my content creation goals? I've got a few of those as well. So in December, I actually beta tested an idea for the content creation of this channel, in that I wanted to post a video every 3 days. And yes, that seems like a lot. That's 10 videos a month. And it felt like a lot. But you know what? I actually had so much fun with it that it didn't feel like as much work as it sounds like. I only missed one video out of that schedule, and that was my second writing vlog because I just kind of trailed off with writing and it didn't really feel worth it to update for only 3 or 4 days. But that's it. I managed to record and edit and put up all these other videos, and it didn't feel like as much work as it sounds like. Yes, there were times where I was stressing, and there were times where I was like, I don't know how to make a thumbnail that actually looks attractive. But ultimately, it was just so much fun. And to me, for this channel, it's really not about having an audience or getting paid or whatever. It's about having fun. All I want to do is have fun and participate in the community. And those videos, although yes, there was work involved, it just felt really, really fun. And it actually helped motivate me to get up and read and write and all of those things. And that's, again, for me, such a huge factor because I love and thrive on public accountability. So I'd like to continue that trend in 2024, a video every 3 days. And again, yes, that sounds like a lot. You'll be seeing my face a whole lot, but I thought about paring it back to every 4 days, and it just didn't feel as fun. It just felt like going through the motions at that point, because at that point, then all you're doing is TBR videos and reading wrap-up videos and maybe a review or two. And it just didn't feel like enough. I'd like to talk about other topics other than just my current reads or whatever. I'm going to continue making videos every 3 days. I hope you come along with me on that and don't get too sick of my mug here. Of those videos, I'm planning on doing at least 2 writing vlogs a month, over a period of 10 days, and taking a break every third 10 days, because I think just with the content creation schedule that I've made, and just with some other factors going into like the end of the month, which is my busiest time of my job, is month end closeout, I think that would help kind of keep me fresh and keep me like on top of things. I'm also planning on doing a few more book reviews and cozy reading vlogs, as well as just talking about the book community and the writing community in general. This is outside of my control almost completely, but I would love to get to triple-digit subscribers by the end of the year. It's not a huge number, I know, but again, this is more just for fun and to join the community that I love so much. So now that you've heard all about my resolutions, my content creation resolutions, and my writing resolutions, let's loop back to my reading resolutions and talk about my January TBR based on all those categories I laid out for myself. So for the first book of the year for my series continuation category, I have chosen a book that I've actually been avoiding reading for a long time. I read the first book several years ago and loved it, but it also made me feel really emotional, and it took me a while to get back to the second book, which I read about a year later. That was 2 years ago because I was just so afraid of all the feelings I'm going to have reading this third and final installment. And that is, of course, The Stone Sky by N.K. Jemisin, the third and final installment of the Broken Earth trilogy. And oh my gosh, I loved this series so much. I really, really do. Reading the first 2 books of the series was a visceral experience for me. I loved them, of course, but they just pulled emotions out of me that I didn't think I could get reading. It had been a long time since I had a reading experience like I had reading the 5th season. I thought in my mind, that was as close to the perfect book as there was ever likely to be. And again, it was because of the emotional destruction it wrought on me. It became very difficult for me to return to it. But of course, I did a year later, and that one was even more emotionally destroying. And for that reason, I knew that I was going to have to finish it eventually, but I just kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And I've decided that no more, enough is enough. I'm finally going to finish this series. I know it is going to just lay me completely on the ground and stomp on my face, and I can't wait. It is time. It is time to finish this. It is time to complete this journey. And I'm a little bit scared. I'm definitely afraid of the way it's going to make me feel, but I think there'll be a catharsis too when it's finally said and done. All right, so the second book on this list is going to be under the new release category that I laid out. And for that, I have chosen The Starling House by Alix E. Harrow. And I don't know too much about this one. I know it's kind of gothic, it's got a spooky mansion in it, and a young woman who's trying to make a better life for herself and her brother in this sort of rundown town. And of course, things don't go according to plan. Gothic fiction and I have not gotten along spectacularly these last several months. I think I gave the last two that I read in this category 3 stars. I don't know why that is. Gothic seems like it would speak to me. Like I said, I love fantasy more than anything, and Gothic isn't quite fantasy. It's kind of in that gray area of horror, contemporary, and fantasy. I would think that I would like that, but for some reason, the last two books I just didn't love. So I don't know what I'm going to get out of this one. I hope that I love it, but we'll just have to read it and find out. So last week, I went and picked up my library read for this month, and I chose The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden. And again, I don't know too much about this one. The whole point of going to the library and choosing from the selection they have on the grounds is that I would pick up something I normally wouldn't read. So I tried not to read too much into the synopses of the books there. This was the one that just most jumped out at me. It seems like it's kind of a historical fantasy. I know it's set in Russia, and the vibes are just immaculate for this time of year. I feel like this would be a perfect read for when the weather starts to get really cold, as it does only in the later part of the winter here in Texas, and the kids aren't around, and I can put on the fireplace and just curl up with a blanket and this book and a cup of hot chocolate. So I'm really excited for this one. This will be definitely a vibey kind of mood read, which I don't normally do, but this will be just great for this time of year. All right, so my next category is a non-fantasy read, and this is actually also a library book, but I picked it up on audio, and that is Episode 13 by Craig DiLouie. And this is a horror book about a haunted house and a ghost hunting team that goes to film an episode of their show, and then, of course, haunted house things occur. I know this is mixed media, and that's why I specifically sought it out on audio. And I also I love ghost hunting type stories. I used to be really, really into that back when I was a teenager and a young adult. So this is kind of right up my alley. And I do love a good haunted house story. So that is all perfect for me, and a good way to kind of kick off this non-fantasy reading year that I want to have. All right, so my next pick is actually going to be completely random, and I'm going to do that with the use of my Mimic friend, which you may remember from my September TBR video. And what I've done, if you didn't see that video, is I have assigned a random number to every book that I own, and I've put all the numbers of the ones that I haven't read or that are the beginnings of new series that I haven't read into this little Mimic guy. You see, he opens up. And I will just pick one at random. And the reason I like doing this is because I like to have a little bit of direction of where I pick the books that I read. It's why I made all these categories for 2024. And I just find that when it's totally random, it just kind of helps motivate me to read it rather than just picking up something on my own whim. It kind of feels like an assignment. And I know that sounds weird, but that does actually motivate me. I ended up reading all of the books on that September TBR video eventually. I DNF'd only one, and I'm in the middle of a second of one of the other ones right now. So it actually does help me finish books that if it's just kind of like random and for an assignment, or if you want to look at it that way. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick a totally random book. So let's try this guy. I'm going to mix it up a little bit. Oops, more. We don't want any off the top. Let's go ahead and pick this one. All right, so we have number 44. And according to my spreadsheet, it's number 44. Okay, all right. I'm excited about this. This is The Girl in the Stars by Mark Lawrence, and this is in the same world, actually, not just the same universe, but in the same world as the Book of the Ancestor series, the first of which, Red Sister, absolutely changed my life. It rocketed Mark Lawrence to the top of my favorite authors list, and all of his books became an instant, immediate buy. So The Girl in the Stars, I'm so excited to read this one. Again, I don't know too much about it other than that it's set in the same world as the Book of the Ancestor, which I'm already familiar with pretty well. And oh my gosh, I'm so happy that this one came up. I'm really excited to read this one. All right, and lastly, I have given myself the option of just a free choice, mostly because I really struggled all month long of December to decide what this last category was going to be. And I just couldn't come up with any that really satisfied with me. Even up until this morning, I was laying in bed going, I need a category, I need something. And ultimately, I just decided this would just be a free choice. Even that was like difficult. Like, what do I want to read? Do I want to read something I've been anticipating? Or do I want to read something that's popular now? Or what I ultimately ended up doing was I ended up picking one of the oldest ones on my TBR. I went back on my Kindle, which is where most of my TBR resides. That's where I was buying books when I first started getting back into reading, just because they were cheap and easy to access. And so I went back in my Kindle library and I sorted them by when I bought them. And I decided on Winter Be My Shield by Jo Spurrier. This is kind of an older book, came out in 2011. It's kind of a classic fantasy about a young woman with supernatural powers fleeing from the king and the powers that be, and just kind of the journey that she goes on. And again, this is kind of a little or a lesser known book. There's only like 1,000 ratings on Goodreads, but again, I think the vibes will just be really great for January. It's got, with the snow and the, kind of the cold and then that all of that element. So that with The Bear and the Nightingale, I think that'll really hit the vibe. All right, and with the last of the fading winter light, that just about wraps us up. Please tell me in the comments if you have any New Year's resolutions that you're trying to adhere to this year. What sort of books are you trying to read? What's your reading goal? And if you're a writer like me, tell me what projects you're going to be working on for this new year. As always, please like and subscribe if you enjoy my content, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.